It's 11 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to see you. And I think you're going to, I know you're going to find today very interesting and informative. I want to welcome Shelley Carson, Howard Doak, and Randy Wright. They are here to visit with us today, or they're just here to be here with us, but I did ask them if they had any interesting facts to share with us, that they would do that because it keeps you informed. So I'm going to talk to you about just a little housekeeping thing for us, and then I'm going to call on Howard and Randy, and then Shelley, I'll call on you so that if you have anything you want to note for us and for our people, we'll do that. So thanks to all of you who responded or tried to respond to our Christmas party survey. Sorry, there was a glitch. They've decided, unbeknownst to us, that after 40 responses, then there's a charge, so they cut you off. Well, that was late, so we didn't know they were doing that. So Tia has it all fixed. After our meeting, we're going to get back in, send another link. So if you tried to respond and didn't get to, please go back in. I really want to hear from as many people as I possibly can to help us make a prudent decision for you guys. So thank you. I appreciate your participation in that. Okay, Howard and Randy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah. No.
I just wanted to let everybody know that I am back at KWRA starting this week in the mornings for sure, every single day.
Yay.
So if needs anything, I'll be here. We really, during all this staying home and COVID stuff, we kind of feel like we need to roll out some lunch and learns, maybe on loan products, just a good refresher for everybody. So we're gonna try to get something planned that we can do, maybe have a group of people in person, but then do other people on Zoom. So we're gonna get that pulled together and let everybody know when we're gonna start doing those. And we just want to be a resource for everybody and kind of refresh people on the different loan products. There were some overlays with COVID and just kind of get everybody on board with the products that we can do.
Awesome. Howard, do you have anything?
I think Randy touched on it. We just want to make sure everybody knows that I know we've had a big stretch where it's been hard to get together. So some people are comfortable getting together and others still are not. Well, so we're going to do a blend of those things. So we're going to go ahead and start doing some trainings at our new office space. And we're going to let people, Zoom in if they want. And we're also going to let some people come here. We're just going to limit the number that can be on site so that people are comfortable. So if you're interested in the trainings that we're going to start offering, please reach out to Randy. Every morning she's going to be at KWRA, and of course you can reach us 24/7. So if you have questions, please reach out. We want to be here, and we're just so happy to support you guys.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. Thank you both very much. We appreciate you. Hey, Shelley girl, do you have anything for us? Shelley, are you there?
You're muted, Shelley.
There you are. Unmute. Can you unmute? Do you have anything? Okay. Well, we'll maybe touch base with her here in a little bit. So we're glad to have you, Shelley. We're glad you're here to learn with all of us. So, all right. So we're going to dive right in, and I've got a lot of notes. So if you see me looking over, I'm just checking my notes to make sure I cover everything. So first of all, I want to tell you there are a lot of topics that we want to cover with you today. Some are reminders, some are just giving you a heads up, and some are telling you to stop it. So I really want you to hear all of them, but particularly the stop it ones, and maybe we'll highlight those. All of the discussion points are for you to have more clarity around the areas. All of them are best practice. So I want you to listen closely and take great notes. All of your leaders here will be weighing in with us. So we're hoping for it to be very interactive between the leaders. I'm going to ask you to keep yourselves on mute. And if you have questions, comments, or concerns, if you'll put it in the chat. Then Tia, could you monitor the chat for us?
Yes, we'll do.
And then if we need to discuss something, voice with with you rather than chat as an individual, then we'll have you turn off your mute. I hope that makes sense. We will try to make that work. So we're going to begin right off the bat with backup offers when a contract is already in place. So it seems that we are in a market, obviously, where there are a lot of multiple offers. A lot of multiple offers where there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we have situations where you may have 2 hours ago just satisfied and ratified an offer. All parties, signature signed, earnest money delivered. Everything is you're under contract, right? And someone calls you, an agent calls you and says, have you got anything going on in this house? I've got an offer. And you say, already have an offer, and the agent says, can I give this to you as a backup? Can I present to you as a backup? Of course you're going to say, yes, you can. Here's where the confusion lies. You are under contract, whether your contract is 2 hours old or 2 weeks old. You and your seller are under contract. And the thing that you do not want to do is present those backup offers to the seller, because what's going to happen? Debbie, what can happen in that situation?
The seller decides he likes the second backup offer better than the one he is contractually obligated to, and figures out ways, particularly during inspections, to bust the first contract.
Bingo. So I want to make sure you're hearing what I'm saying. I think where our agents have become confused is that you're trained all the time in a different kind of market. You have to present all offers. You have to present all offers. That's when you're presenting offers. That is not when you're under contract. So yes, you want to be gracious in this kind of market in particular to with the agent on the other side and say, absolutely, I will hold this, and if something happens, you will be the first to know, and I will certainly present yours and any others I have, but you do not present it to the seller. So thumbs up. Everybody got that? Everybody makes sense? Any questions? Tia, do I have any questions in there?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. Next is the risks of digital contract platforms. So here,
Susan, can we take a step back quick? Sorry, we got a question after you asked that.
yeah.
After Kara's asking, is every offer a backup offer?
That's a really great question. I think in my mind, if they say, will you keep it as a backup offer, I would say absolutely I would. But if they don't say that language, then I don't know. Leaders, how do you weigh in on that?
Well, all the offers that we write now are supposed to have an expiration date on how long the offer is good. So they would all expire within a certain time period, whether they're responded to or not. So I don't think without extending the expiration date, you could consider it an automatic backup offer.
Kara, does that answer?
Well, what if they don't have an expiration date in the contract, Carrie?
They've written an illegal offer according to our rules, and there are quite a lot of that happening out there in the field. People are not putting that in there.
So should backup offers not have an expiration date? Was a follow-up question to that.
Gary?
I would say that you would put an expiration date in there, and it would be how long does that buyer, is he willing to stay in a backup situation? And he would have to make that determination on his own. If he wants to stay a week, 2 weeks, a month, or whatever, and then you would conform your backup offer to expire on whatever the buyer's wishes are.
Susan, GTAR has in our standard clauses, clause that you would put in the backup offer that brings clarity to the fact that it is a backup offer, and how the buyers and the sellers can move on if necessary. So
Where is that, Debbie? Where can they get that?
in the at GTAR under forms and contracts, and then you click on residential documents, and then it's standard forms or standard clauses. I'm sorry, standard clauses.
Okay, how are we on questions? I'm seeing that.
Nate has a question. Can you walk through the scenario of backup offer with multiple offers prior to accepting?
It's a really good question. Well, if it's prior to accepting, it's not backup offers. Guys, Debbie, Jessica, and Don, and Gary, I'm gonna say what I say, but you all are dealing with this every day, so feel free to jump in and tell me to be quiet. If you do not have a contract, then, and you're representing the seller, your obligation is to continue to present all offers. So there should not be any backup offer prior to contract. They should all be being presented if that's what the seller wants. Now, if the seller says, stop, I've looked at enough, I'm not gonna look at any more, I'm gonna decide on these 10 that I have, that's the direction the seller is giving you. Leaders, am I saying that correctly?
Mhm.
I think so.
Yes.
Okay, I think we have a little confusion. It says, are we supposed to have expiration dates on all our offers?
Where is that in the contract?
On the last page.
Gary, where is that?
It's right before the signatures, and the attorneys have determined that all offers must have an expiration date, and we are supposed to be filling that out on all offers. It is often violated, and I don't know whether Don's sending back compliance to have that corrected on the stuff he does, but I see it way too often that there is no expiration date on a contract. But according to OREC, that is supposed to happen unless I'm completely misinterpreting the rules, and Don would be the one to correct me if I'm wrong.
So I have a question before Don responds to that. This is ignorance on my part, so forgive me. When you say there's a rule, an OREC rule, is that on the OREC contract, or is that where is that?
Don, go ahead.
I don't know where it is. That's the first I've heard that. I've not been sending them back.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Most contracts don't have anything in there, but if
It's been the ruling was put.
yeah, we need to have that rule so we can start enforcing it.
But is it on the contract somewhere? That's what we need to
Yeah.
get.
Yes,
Where-
it's on the very
Yeah,
top
it's on
page of page 6, right before the line where the seller rejects the contract. There is an offer expiration date.
But that's not the rule.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm confused. I did not know that it was a have to. I thought that this was, if that's what they wanted to do, if they wanted to do that, they could do that. So Gary, if you could get us the regulation for that, please, because our people like
I
to.
will be happy to look it up. It was about 3 or 4 years ago when we started putting that in our contracts. It was never in the contract until we started putting in there, and the rationale for having it in there was the fact that the attorneys are saying that all contracts must have an expiration date, and we did not have an expiration date in any of our offers. So, but I will find the legal verbiage and promulgate it.
Okay, yeah, so you guys hang tight on that. Debbie, do you have any way in here?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so everybody, we will take that under advisement, and what this proves to you is that there's always something to learn, and clearly we've got all 4 of us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of your leaders that think something different is going on. So we'll figure it out, and we will give you the proper guidance. But for now, Gary's giving you a heads up. You need to make note of it, and you need to utilize it. And then if you are worried about the expiration, time that in your backup offer according to what the contract is. Okay, lots of questions coming up.
Wouldn't an offer expiration become void once there's an executed contract?
The way I understand it is that as soon as you're in negotiations or there's an accepted contract, it's a moot point.
Yeah, it says number, on page 5, termination of offer, the above offer shall automatically terminate, blah, 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 unless withdrawn prior to acceptance or termination. And it doesn't say acceptance of that contract, so I think it'd be acceptance of any contract would terminate it. Would you agree, Gary?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, it becomes, I think, a moot point. I'm not,
Yeah, at that point, it becomes a moot point.
yeah.
Yeah, just think of it this way, you all. When you have a contract, you can't have 5 contracts. You can have 5 offers, but you can't have 5 contracts. So once you have a contract agreed to by all parties and delivery, so this is not over text. This is, it's in dot loop, everybody is signed. It is a contract.
In writing.
And in writing, yes. Digitally or otherwise, it is not in a text. Then all other backup offers are just backup. All other offers have now become backup offers. And if people want to ask you to keep those in mind for a period of time, then that's a whole nother discussion. But you are under contract. And I really want to make sure everybody gets that.
Susan, Julia just typed clause number 18 from the standard clauses, and Tia could read that. It's in the chat, the actual clause itself. Julia typed it in for us.
Oh, it's pretty long. You want me to read it, or you want them to?
Is that the standard clause on what, Debbie?
On backups, backup offers.
How about
Cancellation.
oh, go ahead.
It'd be worth reading.
Okay. Cancellation or release of prior sale backup contract. Buyer understands that seller has entered into a contract to sell the property to another buyer. This contract is in a backup position number with a blank and is conditioned upon written cancellation or release of the prior contracts. If seller is unable to provide such written cancellation to buyer, signed by seller and the other buyers by X, then either buyer or seller may cancel this contract in writing. And then it has some bullets. So buyer's earnest money check shall be check only 1 or 2, do not check both. Held uncashed until copies of written cancellation deposited in the listing broker's trust account as provided in paragraph 2. Time periods in the contract for investigation, inspection, reviews, conditions, cancellation, loan application, loan approval, delivery of abstract, and other obligations shall begin.
Okay, so that's in the chat box. If you all want to capture that and keep it, then that'd be good. What other questions now are relevant to question 1, topic 1?
Are backup offers prioritized by terms or order received?
Guys ask really great questions. So I'm going to use common sense here. I would say, okay, I want to clarify something. Now, when you say backup offers, there's already a contract. This person asking that question, it's a backup offer because there's already a contract.
Yes.
Okay. I would say collectively, I would say, first of all, if you have a backup offer and somebody else calls and says, I'd like for you to keep this as a backup offer, I would say, first of all, it's a courtesy that you should say, absolutely, but I need you to know that I have another backup offer. So if this goes away, I could have 2 or 3 backup offers. I will present all 3 to my sellers. That's how I believe it should be done. Everybody good with that?
Great.
Mm-hmm.
That
Okay.
answered the questions. We're good.
Okay. Anybody else? I love your questions, you guys. You're doing great.
We're good at the moment.
Okay, perfect. All right, so now we're going to talk about the risks of digital contract platforms. Jessica, did you get the documents that have all the boxes so we can just kind of talk about that? We don't need to show it. I just want to talk about it. All right, here's what's happening. And nobody needs to raise their hand if I don't want to know anything that I don't need to know. I'm just going to say this is one of the stop it topics. In digital platforms, you have the opportunity where boxes can be checkmarked. You have it in lead-based paint, you have it in disclosure. What are the other ones, Jess, that have boxes?
These are the ones that I highlighted that I know have, like, you know, check boxes or radio little, you know, buttons. Disclosure to seller or buyer of brokerage duties, acknowledgement and confirmation of disclosures, which is the cover sheet, signed contract or contracts of sale have little check boxes in it. Obviously the residential disclosure, or I don't think the disclaimer statement has one in there. Lead-based paint, buyer broker service agreement, and then this doesn't have check boxes, but it has lots of the little initial points, but I highlighted it anyway as the buyer acknowledgement of inspections.
Okay, all right. So now here is what we are fearing. So again, this is a stop it category. If you are even considering doing such a thing, I want you to stop it. If you have been doing it, I do not want to know, and I want you to stop it, as we all do. So what is happening? There's so many pluses to the digital platform for us in contract writing, but it has made us lazy. I'm just going to tell you, it has made us lazy, and the thought of having to drive somewhere and possibly get a check mark or a signature or whatever has become daunting. Because we have become lazy, because we're moving fast all the time. All we have to do is pull up, and we think it's very innocent, perhaps, if all we're missing is one check mark. Oh, what does it matter? Nobody's going to know. Well, nobody's going to know unless you've talked too much to the other agent and given information that made them aware that possibly your sellers are hard to reach, or they have a hard time doing .loop or DocuSign, blah, blah, blah. You've talked too much, and now the other agent is going to use that against you when all of a sudden a document is presented with a check mark that has been missing for quite some time, and the other agent wants it quickly, and it gets checked. And so then things go south, and the agent uses that against us, stating that is not a check mark, that the seller did not do that because I know that, blah, blah, blah. Now, that just highlights, it's not that specific situation. The thing that concerned me when all of that came up was how easy it would be for you to convince yourself that anything like that was okay, because all it is a check mark or an X or whatever it is. It is not okay. You are violating, I mean, for all intents and purposes, you might as well be fraudulently signing it, because you're signing something, you're checking something that the seller and or the buyers are supposed to sign. Does everybody know how serious this is? Leaders, do any of you have anything else to add to this?
I do.
Jess?
Can I real quick? Because, you know, some of you who are seasoned .loop or DocuSign users, mostly .loop, might be going, oh gosh, but if I change the contract, doesn't it wipe all the signatures out and it doesn't become valid anymore? That is correct if you utilize .loop in the correct way. However, what some people do is download a PDF and re-upload it, or make a copy as a PDF, or they just scan in something that was done by hand and they upload it to .loop, and they may put in that check mark or modify that form at that point. But again, if you are a seasoned .loop user, you need to know that there's an audit trail that you're doing that. It does show that the seller and the buyer have not done that. Shows you're modifying the document, and if we were to audit that file, OREC would come in and say, well, we want to see every historic document and the change that has happened, the history of the file. And we would have to go into each one of those changes and links and print off the document and paper to be able to show them. And that becomes an audit trail.
The signatures were still on there as blue, so maybe that's why I was looking as I saw it.
But don't we,
I don't know what that
Okay, so questions?
can we then, once we've made that change, I send it to the client with an initial beside it to sign it?
That is the correct way to do it.
Okay.
And it will initial and date in .loop if you do that. Now, if you do it by hand, make sure they don't just initial it, they have to date it as well.
Well, doesn't the initial date in
Correct.
.loop?
If you do it in .loop. I'm just saying.
Yes,
if you
that's what I'm
present it
saying.
by
I
hand.
would, yeah, so I would make that change on a PDF version of the contract, send it then to the client to initial, and then the .loop would initial with a signature, with a time and date stamp.
Correct. Anything that's modified on the contract in that manner, whether it's a strike through or an additional check mark that needed to happen, that if it was not originally there, has to be initial and dated as a change.
So I do have one question, because I know that would be okay on a contract to do that. I have done it before on a property disclosure though, where I made that change and then had the seller initial it. And, you know, that goes kind of against everything I was taught as far as making any modification to a property disclosure myself and then having them sign it.
Well, the answer is that is not okay.
Okay.
That is not okay. And thank you for asking. And I know you won't ever do it again.
Susan,
Yeah.
this is Nella. But you can add boxes to the disclosure again on the side and let them fill it in. You can give your client a one-time fill and sign. And so you can just add this blank box and they can check mark what they want and then add their signature to it or their initial next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not personally adding a check mark, yes or no, you're letting them do that check mark, and that is possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jessica, I have a question for you. You were referencing .loop. What about DocuSign? How does all that?
I'm not skilled enough in DocuSign, but I assume they have the same audit trail as well. And I think Alicia's on here. She'd probably be best to say on DocuSign.
Alicia, are you on here?
She's listening, but she's not logged in, so we could free up some space on here.
Oh, okay. All right.
Since we have 4 pages of people on here, could they identify themselves when they get on?
Oh, that was,
Nella,
yeah, that was Cindy Quinton that was before Nella.
Yeah.
well, I mean, going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say, this is Kathy Green?
I'm so happy we have 4 pages of people on here.
No, we have about 100. Can I address and say this question, because I think Tia's up and around. This is from Pandra Hall. She says, say an agent needs to correct the address because they forgot place or avenue, for example, and they have to put the corrected address on every page. Do the buyer and seller need to initial that correction on every page? And I think my answer, and Dawn and Gary and Debbie, you can chime in as well, would be I would just do a supplemental modifying the address or amending it moving forward. And then that way you just have one signature.
Great answer.
Yep. You learned that from me, didn't you?
I did.
Okay, what's the next question? Good question, Chandra. What's our next one, Jess?
I think that nothing changed. Everybody's just going through what we were saying. So I don't think we have any other questions unless anybody else has any at this time.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate what Jessica said about the audit trail. Cannot tell you when something goes under investigation by the state and or litigation, how critical an audit trail is. So please take that seriously and do all the things that everybody has instructed you to do to keep that audit trail. That's a complete file as far as any investigative work is to them. Okay, so we are going to move on to bill of sales. So Mr. Don Beach, you are up, and what I'm going to share with you all is before Don begins is that he has, and I know our other leaders are always instructing you to, if there's personal property that people want to involve in a purchase, then the opportunity is for you to use a bill of sale. It is not to use something as a part of the contract. So I'm going to have Don talk to you about why a bill of sale is important, and that's how you want to handle this situation.
Well, I wanted to preface this. Susan told me not to go down any bunny trails and tell any of my stories. I have to go right to the crux of the problem here. So you're not going to benefit from any of my vignettes today.
I'm sorry, everyone.
Gary, is that a word, vignette?
That's funny.
We had a situation, as a matter of fact, it just culminated to our favor just recently. We had one of our outstanding agents that took care of business the correct way. That's Brian Pingleton, and you all need to congratulate him. But on the contract, on the paragraph inclusions and exclusions, we always put in refrigerator there. The refrigerator, for some reason, always gets all the way through, and no one ever takes it out. But if you put other stuff in there like washer and dryer, you run a chance of the lender saying get it out of the contract, or lamps and stuff like that. Well, I've always said that we're not furniture salesmen, we're real estate people. And the bill of sale, if you put everything on the bill of sale that's outside, appliances, furniture, whatever, then you're going to keep yourself out of any argument. I won't say that you're going to be home free, because there's always a chance for someone to argue the other side. But Brian, matter of fact, he went to REC Investigations. I just talked to him late last week, the investigator, and he said there's no merit in the complaint, but they have to investigate every single complaint that comes in. But Brian did not do a supplemental, and I see a lot of that right now. Everyone's putting chattel things on a supplemental, and then it becomes agreed to and is part of the contract. And that's the argument the other side could use, even if it wouldn't go forward. They could still argue the point that you made it part of the contract, so that it's not outside. So he did a bill of sale, and I just showed the forms, bill of sale, and look at all the stuff that was on there. But it was everything from large furniture pieces in the living room, dining room, bedroom, sunroom, and even exterior concrete benches and things. So Brian did the right thing and put it on here, and the investigator told me that that's the main reason he's going to recommend to the commission that this complaint has no merit, because he did everything outside of the contract on a bill of sale. So what I'm trying to advise you guys to do is not put anything on a supplemental, paragraph 13, or even on inclusions, even though that paragraph is there for refrigerators and such. If you put it on here, you're not going to have an argument. And if it goes to REC, which this one did, the investigator 90% of the time is going to say, it's not part of the contract. We can't investigate this. And they're not going to investigate stuff like this anyway. So I just recommend a bill of sale. When you start going through the house, you put riding lawnmowers and stuff like that in there, deck furniture. It goes on a bill of sale. And this bill of sale was actually for $5,000 instead of $1. So it was quite a big deal. And the buyer was trying to hold everyone's feet to the fire to get money for herself. It was pretty nasty. And Brian even did a great job there. He got her more money than she even expected, yet she still, her and her boyfriend decided to do that. There I go. I'm going down a blue trail.
Stories.
All right. Anyways, I would say stop using the supplementals and writing it into the contract in paragraph 13 and such. Use the bill of sale.
Thank you, and I hope everyone is hearing that and will adopt that. I'll tell you what I'd love to do, but I don't know, leaders, if we could do this. I don't even know that it would make sense because it would already be under contract. If you sent the documents back on, if it was in the contract and said, get this out of the contract and put it on a bill of sale, but that might be a way, that might make it unwieldy for our people. Debbie, talk about the bill of sale when there is not a big monetary number in there and what you recommend.
Well, and Don referred to it as a chattel agreement, and the chattel and bill of sale are interchangeable. And one way you can remember that is chattel is an old English word for cattle. And so cattle was personal property, and they would transact business, or their chattel, if you will, on agreements, meaning the personal property was kept separate from the real property. And so that's what Don's talking about. I just always say that to make it straight all the way down the line and dot all the I's and cross the T's and do it legally is have your buyer come to closing with a dollar bill and put in the bill of sale, unlike this one that Don was talking about where they were actually selling things for a specific amount. But if things are remaining with the property, like the refrigerator, the washer, dryer, and the riding lawnmower, and they're not paying extra for those things, just put $1 in the bill of sale, and at closing, have the buyer hand the seller $1 bill, and nobody can say, that's going to be a double negative. Nobody can say it wasn't done correctly.
Okay, any questions on that? Kara Fulkins just posted that the bill of sale is in .loop. Thank you, Kara.
So no excuse not to use it.
Yeah. Jess or Tia, are you looking at that?
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I think David Summers was saying, could we add a bill of sale into the list of available documents? And Kara did answer him and say, it is in .loop, as well as if you search chattel, it's in the Keller Williams Advantage Library. And so there it is for you. Susan White says, what if refrigerator is on the MLS listing to be included in the sale? And if that's the case, do what Debbie just said. You could maybe add it into the inclusion. Again, Dawn said that usually gets by for whatever reason, but you could also use a bill of sale and have it for a consideration of $1.
You know, the old thing there is if it's in the MLS information sheet, that doesn't mean it's automatic. It still has to be restated in the contract or wherever. You can't just say, well, it was in the MLS. That's another argument we get all the time, and people don't seem to understand that you have to restate it.
Well, so a bill of sale being outside of the contract be considered restating, or in the case of the refrigerator, should they?
It would to me. It would to me. I would accept that.
Well, that's what Robin Erickson says. Do we reference separate bill of sale in contract? Like see bill of sale?
I would say no to that.
No, it stands alone by itself.
There's okay. Howard. I was hoping Howard would weigh in here. There's
Howard, have you been
jump
listening to this? Or Randy, either one? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Bring me just like, what was the final question? I cut out for a second. That's why I chimed back in.
It's about how does the lender feel about refrigerators being included in the contract?
Well, appliances that are built in are perfectly fine. And so there's no problem with a refrigerator. Anything like that can stay with the house. If it is you can actually note on there, fridge to stay with home, and that's perfectly fine. So if you're worried about making sure you note it, that does not count as chattel. That can be a part of the home.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing is, go ahead. What?
No, go ahead, Howard.
So the only, appliances, if they're built-in appliances, of course they stay. Even a freestanding range can, of course, it stays. You shouldn't have to note those things though. But for safety's sake, a fridge you would want to note because so often families take them with them. And so if you're wanting somebody to leave the fridge, I would put it on the contract.
And that's not going to hurt loan to value, or you all aren't going to be looking.
Not going to count as chattel. No.
Okay. Debbie, did that answer?
Pardon?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And Lori Borchers made a comment I saw in the chat about a VA loan that she had. They made her take the $1 out of the chattel agreement and had them put 0.
Because the veteran's not supposed to pay anything.
Yeah, on a VA.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's a VA loan, put 0. Lori, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, what other questions?
I have one question.
Oh, Gary?
I was just going to ask Howard and Randy, either one, the ones that I see most often are refrigerator, washer, and dryer. Those 3 items. Is that going to trigger any response from a lender or an underwriter or?
In 21 years of doing this, I've never had issues with either issue. So. Yeah, they're appliances and they can be built in, and so often people will leave washer and dryer in a space that they can't be removed from, and so it's actually really common. So our company, I can answer for our company for sure. We have no issue with either one.
Okay.
And I will say we have lenders tell us to get it out of the contract.
Yeah.
I have.
Especially with washer and dryer.
If there's other stuff on there, like patio furniture, pool tables, those kinds of things, we always need removed. But sometimes it's lumped in with refrigerators and stoves, and that may be why they're just asking for all chattel to be removed.
Could be.
Well, that's what we're saying here. We need to circumvent the REC investigator saying, let's go forward with this investigation. But if you have the bill of sale in there, he's going to say, I'm not going to recommend this even go in front of the commission. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. You're much safer if you use the bill of sale. Then you don't have to worry about the other side arguing the point.
Well, and just like you're saying, Don, if you're selling something, even for $1, it's not a part of our contract, guys. And so if it's separate, if you do a bill of sale and it's not part of the real estate contract, then they're 2 separate issues then. And we don't, then as long as you don't, lump all that in with the contract, which people often do, then like the VA person who said remove the $1, well, if it's a bill of sale, they're 2 separate things. It's just like somebody bought something at a garage sale, you just, as long as it's separate from the contract, then you shouldn't have any issues no matter what. So, I mean, that is good advice. It would apply to all lenders.
Yeah, I'll go a point further. When you're dealing with the buyers and sellers, you want to tell them, I am facilitating this form. I'm not telling you what to put in. I'm not writing it up, and I'm not putting anything in here. It's between the 2 of you. I'm giving you this form for the buyer and seller to make their agreement on. Don't think you're doing everybody a favor by sitting there and writing all this up for them. This is between them, not you. Take yourself out of it.
Yeah, that's what somebody else asked. Jackie Prophet says, I've had a buyer and seller deal with that stuff independent of me. Is that an issue?
No.
Say no, because that's between them.
Okay, anything else?
The only question I had was if you have, because this comes up more on like lake properties and things like that, where say I've got a buyer making an offer and maybe they're willing to make a full price offer if the place stays, you know, furnished, because obviously it's a second home and they are hoping, you know, not to have to also furnish it. And so your offer might be, you know, contingent on, or at least the buyer may wish for you to make the offer contingent on them leaving, you know, a good amount of furniture.
You know
So
what?
that's the only thing, is when you're taking it out of the contract, then how do you protect the buyer's offer, I guess?
You know what, Cindy, when you bring it up that it's lake property, I have actually heard agents that work for lake companies, including Keller Williams at Grand Lake, that say that's very common. It's very accepted there. I don't know what that would look like litigating that, because bottom line is it's personal property and it shouldn't be in there, but I don't know that. How do you all feel about I don't know that I want to weigh in on lake property, because I think that's a whole different contract scenario.
I just do a lot of it, like Lake Eufaula area. You know, that area seems to be sort of where I see buyers and sellers more open to that, at least.
Well, it's not a case of buyers being open to it. It's a case of protecting yourself. So that's where we want your heads to go. Is we understand that buyers and sellers are all about it because they're excited, and I understand that. But then when they get over being excited and decide they want to take issue with whoever put that in there, that being the real estate agent, now it's in the contract and they can take issue with it. So I'm not so concerned with the buyers and sellers being happy about this. I'm concerned with you protecting you. So leaders, how do you want to guide? Because we have other people on here that do properties at the lake. How do you want to guide them? Do you want them to keep it out of the contract? I mean, if it's a whole house full of stuff, that's a big bill of sale.
Would it be okay, and I'm posing this, to put additional provisions that offer is contingent upon the bill of sale being negotiated? I don't know. It references it. But
Cindy, let us take this up offline after this meeting. Thank you for bringing it up, because I think it's a really valid point. So let us get back to you on that. We'll get back to everybody on that. That okay?
That would be perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Anything else on there before I move to the next topic? Two more.
No, you're good.
We good? Okay. So here's the next one. Here is where we have some confusion. So many times, so many people in our real estate industry, our agents are, you love people and you love each other and you love working with agents and you love being buddies with other agents. And all of this water seems to be getting very muddied when we are writing offers and negotiating offers, and then under contract and negotiating repairs and things like that. And the water is getting muddy because we seem to be confusing our relationships with our fellow agent friends and our obligation to our seller or to our buyer. So I want to reiterate to you and remind you, you have one key obligation as a real estate agent in transacting offers and contracts, and that obligation is to your seller or your buyer. It is not to the agent on the other side who you're good friends with or who you want to be good friends with, so you want the contract or want the deal to go really well. It isn't to the buyer's agent because you feel sorry for their buyer. You have to have absolute clarity, and this is how I want you to think. When you're working an offer, I want you to take your friend hat off and put your business hat on. And your obligation is to the seller or to the buyer, whoever you're working with. And you are to represent them to the best, or represent the transaction if you're on both sides, to the best of your ability. Leaders, anything else you want to say on that? Do I have any comments from the gallery?
I would take it one step further and say, make sure that it's the buyer and the seller that are making the decisions.
Yes.
We get in a lot of situations where I'm convinced that the other party involved is making a decision without even consulting with the buyer or the seller to get their input. And we don't need to be doing that, and hopefully we will not expect that from the other side either. But I feel that happens way more than.
I agree. Thank you for bringing that up. Any questions? It's really simple, isn't it, when you think about it? And I bet there are many of you on here that are thinking through that going, oh my gosh, I've actually found myself doing that. We cannot do that. That's why we're the professionals. And so you think about, if you have two litigators working on a case and they each have different clients, they cannot, but they're friends and they play racquetball 3 times a week. They don't get to wear their friend racquetball hat while they're litigating. They've got to take that off, and then they can be friends at night when they're playing racquetball or going to have a beer or whatever they're going to do. But I can promise you, they're not being all glad handing during the litigation. That's how you've got to think. Any other comments? Leaders, any comments, any additions to that?
I just have a favorite phrase that I think keeps us centered, and that is, if I'm working with the seller, my job is to give the seller the best opportunity to sell. And if I'm working with a buyer, my job is to give the buyer the best opportunity to buy. That's my job.
Well said. Okay, any questions, comments on that in the chat before I move on? Okay, this is our last one, and I saved it for last because it surprised us. We had our commission meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we're reviewing cases that were that had been reviewed and were being either dismissed or assessed fines. And this one came up, and my mouth fell open because it was completely opposite of what we have thought was and trained over the years. So the case was heard because the listing broker and the listing agent called the lender. In fact, I'm going to read this to you. Contacted the buyer's lender without notifying the buyer's agent of her plan to do so. And in this particular case, it had to do with, which doesn't matter what the case was, she shouldn't have done it, had to do with, there were multiple offers involved, and she was actually trying to get the lender to give her intel so that she could monkey with it to help her sellers determine which offer they wanted to take. Totally crazy. Anyway, the buyer's agent and their broker complained, and they were awarded the case, and the broker, the listing broker and the listing agent were both fined and found guilty and fined. And it says respondent may have engaged in conduct which constitutes improper dealing by demonstrating bad faith or incompetency in a real estate transaction when she contacted the buyer's lender, and here's the caveat, without notifying the buyer's agent of her intention to do so. So in the years past, honestly, for my 24 years in the industry, we have always said, and I can remember being told as a listing agent, absolutely, the lender can't tell you a lot because it's privacy, but you have every right to protect your seller by calling the lender and asking whatever you want to ask, and if they answer. Well, you cannot do that. That is a violation of Oklahoma Statute 858-312 and Oklahoma Administrative Code 605-1017. The statute is on page 10 of the code, and the actual code is on page 64 if you want to check it out. So if you plan to do that, the message is you have to call the agent of the buyer, and of course their obligation would be to ask the buyer, do they care? And who knows, based on what they were wanting to find out. That was a huge aha for me when I was reviewing this before the commission meeting and came across it. I thought, oh, I'm missing something. So I didn't even say anything to anybody until we had the commission meeting, and then I could see I wasn't missing anything. So we need to change how we think on that, and we must have the okay of the agent and the buyer before you call a lender and ask them, as a listing agent, before you call the lender and ask them information about a buyer. And the Jessica?
When Susan came in and asked Dawn and I if we thought that this was the right thing or no, you know, it was almost like it was a quiz. But the first thing that I thought about was during all of this pandemic, how many times have we heard about listing agents calling the buyer's lender to make sure that they were pre-approved before the seller let them come into the home?
Yeah.
And that's happening a lot. And I mean, and rightly so, you know, I mean, it is a pandemic. We all haven't seen this stuff, but you know, when Susan said that we have to have the permission and we have to notify the buyer's agent, that's the key right there, right, Susan?
That's the key. We have to notify the buyer's agent. And then what Don brought up, we were actually talking about it again this morning. He said, well, and ultimately the buyer's agent should be talking to the buyer because it's the buyer's business. So I would take it a step further. If I were representing the buyer, I would definitely not give my approval until A, I knew why they wanted to call, and B, I talked to the buyer.
So we have some questions on this.
Okay.
Casey Morton asks, are we allowed to ask if the appraisal has been ordered or for the appraisal results?
If you call the buyer's agent and tell them you're going to call, ask them if it's okay if you call.
Yeah, and I don't think you can get the, I mean, you know, obviously I just had this situation where a lender told the listing agent what it appraised for, which is a big no-no. But when you say the results, meaning did it appraise or did it not appraise? I'm hoping.
Yeah, not specifics.
Not specifics. And then, hold on. Everybody's blasting this. I'm getting
the better question, the better answer, Casey, would be, if you're interested, is you're going to call that agent and ask the agent, do you know if the appraisal has been done, and did it make? And if she goes, I don't know, then you could say, well, are you okay if I call because my sellers are anxious or whatever? That's the conversation I would have. But the first question on that, in that case, would be to ask the buyer's agent if they are aware of that information.
Yes.
Okay, Jess, I'm sorry.
And then, no, it's fine. And then Stacy Johnson, she says email or text buyers realtors so that this is in writing. I would say yes. And then even better is if they have a chain maybe from their buyer that it's okay too, right?
That's a great idea. Yep, I like that idea. It's so funny that I like that idea, and I hate texting so much in contract situations, but that's a good backup. It's just no different than if you have a conversation on the telephone, which God forbid, I know that is just like in 1950 with everybody right now. But truly, it's good to follow that conversation, phone conversation up with an email or a text confirming what you just talked about. So yeah, that was a good idea.
And then Chris Herbert says, do you have to call the buyer's agent after a contract has been canceled?
So the question is, does the listing agent have to call the buyer's agent when a contract has been canceled? Well, who canceled it? How do you know it's canceled?
Yeah, I guess I need more information on that.
Yeah, give us some more info, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
We can dig in on that.
Julia Corsier says, do we need to have the okay in writing? I think we just addressed that. Should we document the consent of the buyer's agent? Yes.
Yes.
That's from Jackie Profit, excuse me. Chandra Hall, I've had more deals fall through from financing than ever. Susan White,
I want to say something about that too.
Okay.
Go ahead, finish there.
Susan White, shouldn't the buyer already have an approval letter? Yes. That is correct. I just know that during the pandemic, people have been taking extra precaution and making extra sure. Brian, so often the buyer and buyer's agent don't follow up with lender on ordering the appraisal, so we end up having the potential to miss deadlines.
Well, that's when I agree, and I can see that happening. So that's when you have to have the fortitude and grace to call the buyer's agent and prod them. You can do that. That's okay. Nicely, graciously. We need to be, has the appraisal been ordered? Oh, it hasn't. Well, we need to get that done. Can you call and make sure that that happens? And then do you care if I call later and see if the lender's ordered it? There's all kinds of ways you can be very assertive and gracious at the same time and get what you want done.
Can I make a suggestion on this? If it's serious enough that people are being written fines for it, could we just have some kind of document that when we receive offers, if we intend to do that, where we just send it over for signatures? Saying that as the listing agent, I will be reaching out to the buyer's lender?
No, I think so here, no, I don't think we're going to have a document like that. We're going to end up having so many documents, Cindy. However, I do think, well, however is not, so forget that I said however. This is one of the reasons that I think we're running into so many different problems is we want to solve everything with a document or with something really quick and easy. We have to have a conversation, you guys. This is a situation when you're going to have to make a call, or you're going to have to send a text, or you're going to have to send an email. You're going to have to communicate. It can't just be a blanket, this is going to cover everything and I won't have to deal with it. That's just part of the deal. That's just part of the deal. Has Chris added to?
Yes, he says, my question was, after a contract has busted and released, do you have to get permission from buyer's agent to be able to call the lender?
Okay, I'm missing something.
Yeah, I guess I you know, why are we calling the lender after it's busted? Just to see.
I think Chris, are you trying to ask about, like, let's say the deal's busting because of financing and you're wanting to find out from the lender if the financing was what caused the deal to bust and what happened and all so on and so forth is what I'm hearing from those questions. Is that correct?
That is correct. I had a deal where the deal went south because of financing. And as I'm putting it back on the market, I just want personally to have some information as to why the deal busted, so that when people ask me, you know, when it went back on the market, this is a house I've sold 3 times now. What was the reason? And I didn't give any details about who the individual was, but I wanted to get some idea from the lender as to what happened.
Yeah.
So
I think
can a lender do that?
Well,
can a lender do that?
I think you would need, I think it's the same. I think it would constitute the same thing, because if you're calling about the transaction that was with that particular buyer, if that buyer found out, he could still complain. And I think you'd be in the same boat. I think you would need to have permission, and typically you kind of end up with permission because they're wanting you to release the contract and get their earnest money back. And so generally the buyers are perfectly amicable to say, yes, call and share what happened. So I generally, you know, most buyers give permission for us to talk to people because they're wanting us to explain what happened. Just like Royce said a few moments ago, hey, I got furloughed, you know, or, you know, something out of my control. So they want us to share that. But if you call after the fact about a deal, technically speaking, lenders shouldn't be sharing anything with you. Like if it busts, I mean, that's privacy. I mean, we wouldn't be able to tell you anything. I mean, now people do. I mean, I've always been known as the guy who overshares. I'm saying that carefully, but you know, it really does need to be the permission of that buyer to be sharing anything. And I will tell you, this happens like daily. I mean, we get calls daily, hourly. Hey, what's going on with this? What's up with this person? Where are they on this process? And they're not involved. I mean, technically speaking, I think this would probably apply to the agent that's involved in the transaction. I think the interpretation, if a buyer was to complain and say my actual agent called my lender, I think this would probably apply there too. I mean, I think it's just happened for as long as everybody's been in real estate. And because again, it's like calling somebody's bank up and saying, tell me about their personal information.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea that we get permission from the buyer is the most important part of this discussion.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah, just think about it. If you were the buyer and anybody was able to call you, Howard, and get my personal financial information about any aspect of that transaction, that would completely break trust between you and I if I were the buyer.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have a comment from iPad, and I just wanted to clarify this. I don't know who. It just says iPad. So sorry, iPad, I can't direct you appropriately or direct my comment to you, but did I hear that right? Buyer's agent isn't supposed to tell listing agent what the home appraised for, just tell them yay or nay.
Correct. That's correct.
Does anybody want to weigh in on why that's?
Yes.
Okay,
I've seen that cause more problems. So let's say, guys, you have a transaction and the home appraises for 20 grand over, and you tell your seller it came in 20 grand over. What are they going to do? They're going to get mad. They're going to think, oh my goodness, I listed my house for too little. It's going to change the dynamics of the transaction. If when you're trying to negotiate a TRR, suddenly they're going to bring that into play, even though you've already negotiated the sales price. You know, we're not supposed to tell people what the home appraised for. We're just supposed to say it appraised the value. If there's repairs, we're supposed to take them out of the appraisal and give those repairs to them because it can cause problems. And it's private information. The appraisal's been ordered for the sake of the lender and the buyer, not the people selling the home and not the realtors. And so, I mean, I have seen sellers get upset when they find out the value of the property. And I just wouldn't recommend it. You know, I would just say the home appraised and there's no repairs. We're good to go. You know.
Right language. That's
Ditto.
Yes. Gary?
we need to remember that we have some leverage in the financial supplement that we use in our contract. That within 10 days, the buyer is to instruct to immediately begin the process and instruct the lender to issue a written statement regarding the review and the fact that they have their credit worthy and have funds, confirmation they've paid the listing, the initial fees, and the property appraisal has been ordered. So there is leverage in here for us to find out information. Unfortunately, a lot of lenders never read our contracts, so they don't realize they're supposed to provide that information. But we have it there, and if we don't get it, we can take steps to cancel the contract because they're not following through. So we do have some leverage if we just figure out how to use it.
And it's so easy to use if we just read it.
It makes it a little easier, yes.
Susan, I know we've gone over, but were you going to talk about the statutes of fraud or?
No, we have gone over. I think I'm going to save that for a later date because we'll probably have more information about that case at a later date.
Sure.
So stay tuned for that. There's your teaser for the next meeting. Okay, any questions or comments we did not get to? We look good.
I think we've addressed everything.
Okay, so I just want to close with a couple of things. First of all, so awesome that 100 people are on here, and we're gonna post the recording because it cut everybody off. We had other people wanting in. We would have had more than 100. So we'll have to deal with that, figure out how we can do Zooms that will have unlimited, and we will do that next time. But nobody's gonna miss it because we had great information and you all had incredible questions, and I'm proud of you. Mr. Beach, did you have something?
Well, Shelley Carson never did get her platform.
Shelley,
Remember,
did
she
you
got-
have something for us before we sign off?
But you
No,
had
but I
something-
appreciate. I was just gonna say I appreciate the opportunity to learn. I just learned so much on that call, and I don't even write real estate contracts. So
Oh,
kudos.
good. Well, that was my second thing, was to thank Shelley, Randy, and Howard for being here. And Howard and Randy, thanks for weighing in on our queries. And you guys are terrific. It was great to see all of you, even if I only saw your names. And leaders, thank you for being on here with me, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Bye, guys.